All right. We are going to go back to our friend base 5. I talked a little bit about other bases just to give some perspective about what it means to be a base. Again, learning something in particular about just base 5 isn't really my goal. It's just kind of rethinking bases in general. But I'm going to return to base 5 because I want to talk about kind of the next step. All right, we've done a little bit of work moving to and from base 5. From is actually the easiest one, right? Because if I write something like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, base 5, I've got my handy dandy key down here in the corner, by the way. I know, hopefully we know, that we've got 3 units, we got 2 strips, we got 1 mat, and essentially we've got 125, we got 2 5s, those are my 2 strips, and I got 3 1s. We're going to kind of sum those. If you are a picture drawer, don't worry, I'm still going to draw some more pictures. But hopefully we're starting to see just kind of the mathematical consistency of like, 1, 5, 25, 125 in our strip mats, just to kind of help move things along. So this would be 25 plus 10 is 35, plus 3 more would be 38. And again, 38 is showing base 10. That's kind of our number system. Essentially, it's telling me how many of these little blocks there are, right? That's what base 10, that's what we're counting in, is we're saying how many squares would there be if I took and drew all those out. And then we've been going backwards from this as well and saying like, well, if I had a ton of these little units, a ton of individual units, again, thinking of them as base 10, let's say I've got 82 of them. The strategy that I've been talking about is saying like, all right, start with our biggest one. How many strip mats could I fit in there? Well, none. I'm going to mark the 0 just so we get in the habit of including the strip mats. You don't normally write the 0 part. But how many mats fit in there? Well, 25. I can fit some 25s in there. Specifically, I know I can get up to 75. That's 3 of those. And sometimes people just kind of do this part in their head, but I'm going to write it out. Like the 3 mats would be 75. So what's left? Well, there's 7 units left. Oh, those 7 units could make 1 more strip. That's a 5, leaving me with 2 at the end. So 82 units, 82 base 10, would be 3, 1, 2 base 5. Okay, so what? That's the part we already know. The part that I want to get into is this idea of like, all right, what happens if I put more blocks in there? What happens if I add more units? Well, I want to think about what we're doing when we do adding in base 10, and then we'll kind of apply it to base 5. The obvious thing we could do is always convert things to base 10, add, and then convert them back. I'm going to try and avoid that. I'd like for us to change the way that we think about bases, and so I'm going to encourage you to, that's a little more time consuming, but it's probably a little easier. I'm going to try and say, like, let's take the shorter but potentially more difficult path here. All right, so let's say I've got 2 regular base 10 numbers. Think about what I'm really saying here. And I know that I don't draw things in base 10, but base 10 is just a base system. So essentially, I have 3 units, and I have 2 strips. Now, these strips in base 10 would each be 10s, right? Again, that's what we're familiar with for being a little kid. I would have 18 units. It's starting to look like circles, but that's what we get. And then 1 really tall base 10. All right, and when I add these 2, what ends up happening is I got my 8, and I just need 2 more of these. I group them together. And so this sort of grouping that I have, I only have 1 left over, and I can take that grouping, and it becomes another strip. And so that's where I get 1, 2, now 3, and 4. That's why it is 41. Obviously, we already knew that 23 plus 18 was 41. Here's what we're doing numerically with the little blocks. Again, you did this when you were a kid. At some point, I would be willing to bet. And instead, I'm going to ask for you to take that same, make yourself a little kid again. Take that same strategy and apply it here using base 10 blocks. Okay, so let's start simple. Let's move to base 5. I've got 32, so I got 3 strips, and I got 2 units, and I got 2 units and 1 strip. This leaves me with 4 units and 4 strips. This would become 4, base 5. That makes sense. 2 plus 2 is 4, and 3 plus 1 is 4. Like, I'm a happy camper. Of course it makes sense. All right. So what happens if I say I've got 1, 4, base 5, and 1, 2, base 5? Well, according to my previous plan, I would say 4 plus 2 is 6, and 1 plus 1 is 2, and I got 2, 6, base 5. Haha! Except the number 6 doesn't exist in base 5. I only get the digits 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which ironically does not include the number 5, just like we don't have a number 10, but it does in fact include 5 digits. So the 6 there fundamentally just breaks my brain. I don't know what to do with this 6. So I'm going to graphically organize this again. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 units and a strip. Down here I have a strip and 1, 2 units. These guys are going to bind together to make an additional strip, which we would carry over. And so what I actually see is not this. I have this 1 left over, dude. That's my 1. And I now have 1, 2, 3 strips. This would be 3, 1, base 5, not 26 base 5. Because again, 6 doesn't exist in base 5. So numerically, I'm going to draw a lot of pictures, but I don't anticipate you having to draw a lot of pictures. This makes you happy to consistently get through this lesson. But let's try what this might look like just using numerals. 3, 2, base 5, 4, 1, base 5. I'm adding. All right, so I got 1 and 2. Good to go. That's 3. I understand that. That fundamentally makes sense with me in base 5. I have 4 and 3. Now, what would happen is I'd have 3 strips. My strips are getting simpler the longer I go on. And I would 4 strips down here. And I would grab 5 of them to become the mat. And then I would say, oh, I got 2 left here, and I got 1 mat. Instead of going with that drawing method, or in addition to, since I already did it, I'm going to say, all right, 4 and 3, we know what 7 is. So in my mind, I understand that's a 7. But knowing that 5 is always kind of our grouping number, just like in my original example, I could say like, hey, I know I've reached the quota where we've beat 10, and I know that I need to carry 1 over. We just need to get in the habit of carrying 1 over whenever you get to 5 or above 5, and then leaving behind the 2 that are less than. Let's try this. Let's put this in action. All right. So on the left-hand one here, I've got 4 and 1. That makes 5. That means I'm going to get another group. I'm going to carry 1. This time I'm drawing literally a number 1, not a mini strip there. And what would be left over if I took 5 out of 4 and 1? 0. I would have no units. They would all have been converted. Now I've got 1, 2, and 0. That makes 3. No conversion necessary. And the 1 just carries down. It becomes base 5. 1, 3, 0, base 5. On the other side, I've got 3, 3, 5, and 4, 4, base 5. So I've got a little bit more carrying to do here, a little bit more arithmetic I need to do in my head. In the units place, I have 3 and 4. I stupidly made them both 3 and 4, so I'm going to make sure you're clear about which place value I'm talking about. The units place value, I have 3 and 4. That's 7. I'm going to carry 1 over. That 1 is worth 5 units, right? Which means 2 would have been left over. Now I've got 4 and 3 and 1 strips. That's 8 strips. I'm going to need another group to make a mat. How many of those strips would be left if I combined 5 of them to be a mat? Well, I had 8. 5 of them would become a mat. That means 3 are left over. I have 1 mat that I newly have converted, and I got no more to add. Becomes base 5. We can check our work, but again, this is what I want to get out of the habit of doing, so I'm going to make a notation to prove that what I did makes sense. I don't want us to rely on this. But this 24, this 2, 4, base 5, would actually be 2 strips and 4 units. That's 2 5s, which is 10 plus 4 would be 14. 1 mat would be 25 plus 1 more would be 26. That puts me at 40 if I were adding in base 10 conventionally. Again, I got to check my work and say out of 40, I can get 1 mat, that's 25, and I can get that to be 3 strips, that's 15, leaving me with nothing left over. 1 mat, 15 strips, nothing left over. 130 base 5 is in fact equal to 40. Same deal over here on the right. 33 base 5, 3 strips is 15, plus 3 more is 18. 44 base 5, 4 strips is 20, plus 4 is 24. This would be 242. I can get one. Well, I could do it 2 different ways. I could convert all this, or I could notice like, hey, it's just 2. Oops, it's just 2 more right here. That number are 2 apart. Hey, what do I know? These 2 numbers are also 2 apart. Plus 2. So I'm going to save myself some time and energy and just say, yep, it works. All right, base 5. If you see a 5, you have a problem. That means it's time to carry. We're just focusing on adding today. Good luck.